people believe that the age of sexism is over, but if that were true, why are there so few women in positions of real power? Men and women still often operate out of completely separate mindsets, and if you don't understand what the other person is meaning behind what they're saying and what's really going on and how to respond appropriately, you could be standing outside of a locked door with no key to get in. This section of the program is about the values and behaviors that traditionally drive men and women, and what are the strategies you need to have to navigate this area and find the key to open the door with ease. This first video is about the different values and behaviors, and you can see where you are. So what we're talking about here is the traditional male and female cultural models. Now wait a minute before you say, no, I'm not traditional. Lots of women have the traditional male models and lots of men can have the traditional female models. So just because you're a woman doesn't mean you follow the total traditional female role. But wouldn't it be useful for you to know what models you fall into so that you can be a bit more flexible and make more choices? I think if you don't know what's going on, you can't make many choices. So let's look at what the traditional male model is and the traditional female model is. See if you can figure out where you are in different aspects of your life, whether that's in work, whether that's at home. One of the big differences between how men and women think about things at work is right about the area of jobs and careers. The traditional male model, a job is just a series of tasks, a bunch of stuff that you have to do. In the female model, a job is a place you have to be, that you have to go, and you have to do it because you're earning a living. And a lot of women do jobs, and they're just jobs. They don't aspire to anything. It's just something they have to do to earn a living. Whereas men, they just feel it's a bunch of tasks to do. I'm going to come back a little later and talk about the implications of that. Then there's another big difference in how traditionally men and women view career. So what are these differences? In the traditional male model, when thinking about a career, someone who operates from this model thinks of a career as a ladder or a set of steps and stairs where they get more money, more responsibility, more status, and it's somewhere leading upwards. But traditionally in the female model, many people think of their career as doing something that is personally meaningful, that is really making a contribution and making a difference. So women tend to think about choosing a career as a calling, as something that really meets a deep inner need or passion. And many men have thought about a career as simply how you get more power, more money, and more status, going up. And you can see these are very different ways of thinking about your career. How do you think about your career? It's worth a thought. Do you think about getting a promotion, moving ahead? Or do you think about doing something that's very important for other people or making a contribution? Or do you do some of each? Let's take the idea of risk. In the traditional male model, risk is seen as an opportunity where you could win big, but you could also lose. So win, lose, depends on how you play the game. Whereas many people who operate from the female model, and I know a lot of women who do this, and I do this too, is we think of risk as a danger to be avoided at all costs. Now, when you zoom out and you look at these two ways of looking at risk, win, lose, play your cards right, you could be a big winner, or whoa, don't take a risk because you could lose everything. What if somebody says, why don't you get a loan to promote your business? You go, no, I don't want to have the debt. So you can see that these two ways of looking at risk really affect how much you're likely to do in terms of your business or your job, in terms of leaping ahead. Now, when I look at these two things, I think it's important to think of risk in both these ways, because if you don't consider the dangers, you could be very naive about what's happening. But if you also don't consider the opportunity to get ahead, maybe you're going to miss that big opportunity that could have been the one you needed. Men and women also see life very differently. In the traditional male model, if you were to ask a whole big group of men, a lot of them would say, life is like a team sport. It's a game where you need a whole pile of players to win. And when a large group of women were asked the same question, life is like a what? A lot of them said metaphors like life is like a traditional classroom. So when you look at the metaphors from the traditional male model and the traditional female model, it leads to a whole different set of beliefs, values, and behaviors. If life is a team sport, then winning is the number one thing you got to do. And deceiving your opponent is really important. If it's a team sport, you need all these players. You got to have a team to win. And it doesn't matter if you don't like the goalie, you still need the goalie to win the game, right? So that's what a team sport is like. But if life is like a traditional classroom, it means you have beliefs like work hard and you'll get ahead. So if you study hard, you'll pass the exams. In sports, cheating is rewarded as long as you get away with it. But in a classroom, cheating is absolutely to be avoided. Here, winning is happening sometimes, losing is happening. Yeah, you win some, you lose some. Here, if you lose, if you fail a grade, that's a disgrace, not only for you, but for your family. So you can see there's a lot of differences between life is like a traditional classroom or life is like a team sport. So one of the things that we find women who operate from this model doing is they focus very, very hard on doing a job correctly and making sure that it's perfect in every way. So if that's you, maybe you're operating from the female model. But some people like to treat life as if it's a game, and depends on how you play it, what happens. So get a chance. What's the evidence you have in your life? Is life very serious and it's pass or fail and it doesn't look good if you don't look good and you don't succeed? Or is it just a game? Because that's one of the big differences in metaphors. The traditional male model thinks about life as a game. Figure out what the rules are and play it. And here, it's serious, it's real, and there are real consequences. Another question that was asked of both large groups of men and large groups of women was, how do you decide how to behave with your boss or your clients? Well, people from the male group said, well, I figure out what my boss wants or what my client wants, and then I do that. And if they weren't happy, then I have a think and I figure out some other way. It's just a game. And you figure out what the rules are and you do it. Whereas people from the female model said, what do you mean, how do I decide how to be with my clients or my boss? It's real. I don't want to be a hypocrite and change my personality just to fit some other body's preferences. Like, why would I do that? Because when we're operating from this model, life is real. And it's important to be real and authentic and not to be a hypocrite. And it's not a game. And in the male model, life is a game. Figure out the rules, see if you can pass the test. If not, try something else. And this shows up in very different ways in men and women's behavior. One of the consequences of these differences as life is a game or life is real is that when someone gets criticized, let's say your boss says, look, I'm not happy with your report, or a customer is upset because they weren't happy with the way you did something. In the male model, you go, oh, okay, I'll try it some other way. In the female model, if you are really being you and you are really authentic and someone else who you care about is not happy, it feels like a disaster and you take it personally and very emotionally because you are really working hard and you're really putting yourself out there. Now, does that sound like you sometimes, or is you take it a little bit more lightly? These differences can cause really bad communication between people operating out of the male model and people operating out of the female model, even if they're both women or both men. And it's really important when you're thinking about your career to notice how you think about it and decide whether are you being the most strategic you could be? Are you focusing on the right thing at the right time? And in the future videos, we're going to take this apart and look at each step so that you can figure out what are your best strategies when. And it could be that you operate out of one model during one part of your life and another model out of another part of your life, but when you're aware of it, you can make great decisions. And you know, these differences show up in how people behave and how they think about certain concepts. For example, the definition of the word cooperation, there's a very different male definition than a female definition. The traditional male definition of the word cooperation means you do your part and let other people do their part towards a shared goal. And the female definition of the word cooperation is you do whatever needs to be done towards a shared goal. So imagine the scene. A male and female life partner, maybe husband and wife, are at home and they're getting ready for guests. And the male is operating out of his definition of getting ready for guests. So he does the one thing that he was asked to do, and then he stops and starts watching TV. Whereas the wife is running around like crazy trying to get everything done, looks at the husband and goes, what are you doing sitting there when there's so many other things to be done? Well, I did what you asked me. So we're going to look at a lot more of these differences. But for now, I want you to think about, where do you operate from most at work? Are you running the female model? Or are you running the male model?